Please, Silvia Montello.
I have to stand on tiptoes for this. So thank you so much, Ben and Kirosh, for that amazing introduction, and thank you, Greg, for the incredible work, and everyone for passing the baton to me. I'm genuinely delighted to be here and to be able to speak to you all as the new CEO for AFEM. So thank you for joining us. So today I'm going to start off with a brief look at the general state of play of the industry over the last 10 years and how far we've come. I then want to highlight 10 key initiatives that AFEM have spearheaded over the last 10 years, so 10 successes that show the work that we've been doing. And then finally, I want to speak to you about where the next 10 years are going and how we want to work alongside all of you and all of our electronic music colleagues to maintain a buoyant and successful ecosystem and to drive success using collaboration, innovation, diversity and inclusion, and sustainability. So before that, I actually just want to take everyone back to 2004 quickly. In the UK, there was a famous music journalist who bemoaned that dance music was dead. He said that because the Brits had dropped the Best Dance Act category, and his words were, "Until dance music finds the point where innovation and excitement meets commercial appeal, the 90s dance scene is likely to remain an oddly arcane memory." Now we fast forward to 2022, and here we are. We're still dancing, we're still raving, we're still celebrating this glorious, diverse global scene, a vibrant culture, and one that constantly renews itself with a new generation of DJs, fans, producers, and ravers. And we're also celebrating that the Brits have reinstated the Best Dance Act, and not only that, but it was won by a solo female act, Becky Hill. Congratulations. In the last 10 years, we've seen the growth of the global value of dance and electronic music from $4 billion to just shy of $7.5 billion pre-pandemic. DJs are amongst the biggest acts in the world and the biggest draws for festival lineups, and DJ producer catalogs have recently been valued at and acquired for multi-millions of dollars. Dance and electronic music-specific streaming and download platforms have grown from strength to strength. And the digital consumption of music is showing an upturn again in most of the major markets, which is great news. Dance music's even being bought on vinyl and cassette again. Happy days. So my question is, did dance music ever really go away? As we're celebrating now 10 years of AFEM, we are celebrating its place in a very much still alive and vibrant sector. So here's a quick 10 reminders of what we've achieved in those first 10 years. Here are some of our campaigns. Safe in Sound, raising awareness about drug and alcohol policy at events, harm reduction and festival safety. The Get Played, Get Paid initiative, working with the global PROs to move millions in royalty distributions from electronic music at festivals and clubs over to a pay-per-play model using music recognition technology provided by our members. Stealing Our Own Success campaign disrupted the activity of pirate sites, which was costing the electronic music genre multiple millions of revenue. The AFEM Kite Mark was launched to host on download stores and remix sites and ghost production sites so that fans and producers knew which sites were legitimate and which ones paid out royalties fairly. Protect the Dance Floor. This was instigated by the threat of closure to Fabric in the UK, but became a focal point around the increased threats to electronic music venues through gentrification, licensing restrictions, and inappropriate policing. The CO2 offset calculator was launched in partnership with an industry-leading specialist, and this way the community could calculate and offset their greenhouse gases that were produced from flights around to events worldwide. In 2017, our Diversity Inclusion Group launched a sexual harassment helpline to support anyone affected by this. That helpline still operates today, and I'm really hoping one day we won't need it. In 2019, there was the delivery of the Mental Health Guide for the electronic music industry. And also that year, the Global Survey of Gender Diversity and Inclusion in Electronic Music. Finally, we can't forget the live sector support throughout the pandemic. AFEM worked tirelessly with our member organisations to help lobby governments and authorities to find practical solutions so that venues and clubs could continue to operate profitably and successfully wherever possible, and to share trusted guidance and intel across our membership. Pause for water. So, what's next? How do we push forward in the next 10 years, and what does that success look like? So, collaboration, this for me is key. Coming out of the schism of a global pandemic, we've got the opportunity to build back better. And to keep on moving up and keep our global market share moving, we keep evolving by working as a more united force. So labels, publishers, artists, DJs, producers, agents, promoters, venues, CMOs, commercial platforms, technology platforms, we are all one ecosystem. Let's work that way. Let's come back stronger together and focus on the things that unite us and our scene and maximize those opportunities. We can achieve more together, and it's actually necessary given the competition for our dollar is greater than ever before. We've got more splintered music consumption than ever. There are more platforms. There's a ton of competing content. There's now 75,000 tracks delivered to Spotify every day. There's more competition from other leisure activities for the consumer spend, gaming, non-linear TV subscriptions, and the even huger UGC content boom. There's competition from other genres. We all know about the domination of hip-hop lately, but there's also been the explosion of Latin music globally, and also the globalization of non-English language pop and rock, so music from Southeast Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and other markets. We also can't ignore the effect on consumer spending by the state of the global economy. We've got cost of living increases and the war in Ukraine having an impact on energy prices and the food supply chain. Less disposable income means tougher choices that people are going to have to make on what leisure activities they afford. So let's work together and collaborate and keep thinking about how we can support our whole value chain and not just look at our own individual parts of it. We take a holistic approach. The pandemic's been brutal, but out of that despair came invention and innovation, and we can continue with that as we pull back to the pre-pandemic levels over the next 12 to 18 months. So moving on to innovation. There are so many technological innovations providing better ways for artists, DJs, and producers to build meaningful connections with their audiences. I know Rob's already touched on some of these, but there's, obviously loads of talk about Web3, the metaverse, NFTs, cryptocurrencies, and rightly so, because we're entering into a new era where opportunities to connect culturally and commercially aren't bound by the restrictions that they were before. This space is developing faster than some of us can keep up with, but it's still early days and there are still some caveats around implementation, about more mass market adoption and mechanisms for providing meaningful revenue generation across the creator sector, not just at the top end, but it can and will happen. This space still doesn't really lend itself to the sorry mess of music rights, copyright ownership, licensing and pay-through that we're still tangled in after decades of a lack of cohesive global rights infrastructure. We've really made it as hard for ourselves as we possibly could as a music industry. And then when you combine even the lack of understanding amongst the traditional music industries and our complex rights web, you bring in the newcomers, the tech bros, the innovators and disruptors. They look at our space with dollar signs in their eyes, but often a naivety in terms of what can and can't work. So some people are going to find themselves on the precipice of something that can be transformatively great or transformatively business destroying. AFEM wants to have the authoritative and trusted voice to help our community to navigate this exciting, bewildering space. And we need to educate and guide people towards the genuinely achievable opportunities and away from the chances and the snake oil and the bad actors that always present themselves when something new and sexy and powerful comes up. I know some other people here are old enough to also remember the world before the internet. And there was a similar pattern back then. We had the dot-com boom, loads of excitement, disruptive ideas, tons of investment, and then the dot-com bust, which left quite a few people high and dry and out of pocket. I'd like us to work on preventing history repeating itself, not selling people a dream that's just a dream, but finding solutions that are really right for their business. And let's not forget, innovation is still needed in our current world technology as well. Our sector and AFEM has got a duty to protect our players and lead them towards true success and ways of enabling them to grow their audience, their reach, and their revenue. There are still too few creators across the music industry that actually earn enough from music revenues to earn a living out of music. It's a top 1% or less, depending on which analysis you read. So we're committed to being a stronger voice, forging stronger partnerships with streaming platforms, big and small, so that they recognize the specific needs of electronic music on their platforms and adapt for the structure of our music to lead to meaningful music discovery. We struggle in a streaming landscape that wasn't designed to accommodate our music. It doesn't cater for it as well as it should, doesn't really structure itself for the rights or the metadata structures of dance and DJ-led electronic music. There's still a worse than poor consumer experience on a number of platforms outside of the specialists, and especially on mobile. And there are platforms still trying to figure out how to deliver continuous streamed DJ mixes. It's 2022, and DJs have been mixing records continuously since the late 70s. It's so intrinsic to our scene, we've got to work hard to make sure that it's properly accommodated across the streaming and digital age. So let's put our energy into making this better for our creators, our rights holders, and our consumers. Let's also make sure across clubs and festivals that proper music recognition technology can correctly establish what's been played and who needs to get paid, and have that as a standard implementation, not just a nice to have. If the DJs are getting paid properly for their sets, let's make sure the people that create the actual music that's being played don't carry on getting the rough end of the deal. So we need to guarantee that everyone who's contributed to a track, a remix, or a production gets credited and gets paid their share. MRT means we're on the brink of being able to properly derive all revenue streams available for producers, performers, artists, songwriters, from mixes online and offline. So this continues to be a huge priority for us. And AFEM will also partner with other trade bodies and powerful voices in the streaming and live streaming space so that we can lobby for the best revenue shares for our artists, producers, and songwriters. We don't need to do this on our own. There is a movement across the rest of the industry and even within some governments, and it's building momentum. So we make sure that we lend a strong voice to that, and that's going to be crucial for benefiting our creators and affecting positive change. Streaming is undoubtedly going to change over the next 10 years, so let's take the opportunities that we can to change that for the better. And a few other technology innovations and solutions that are here, right now, that we should also remember. There's tech that can provide advances against future income from streaming, and that can be a lifesaver for artists, labels, and rights holders who need a cash injection but don't want to sign away their rights or sell outright. We want to make sure our community is aware of all of these options and how to choose the right ones for their businesses. There's tech that can create smart contracts for artists, labels, and contributors without huge legal fees. There's the technology in VR and AR, which is still evolving. And electronic music lends itself to immersive sonic experiences. So let's look at spatial audio, Dolby Atmos, binaural, high-res, and high-def ways of listening. In the same way that we don't want to go to a club where the sound system's shit, why should we put up with shit quality music in the rest of our lives listening experience at home or on the move? We don't have to. So let's embrace all of those technologies and bring them affordably to our artists, producers, and fan bases. Then there's also still the hybrid of live and live streaming, which enables multiple opportunities to monetize content. We know our audience want in-person events, but they also want to be able to access great content at events where they can't be there in person. So let's continue to harness that. Moving on to diversity and inclusion. So dance music has prided itself in being open to embrace diverse genders, ethnicities, sexualities, both in our audiences and in the music's originators. Let's not go backwards to the days when women didn't feel safe from groping hands or spiked drinks. The best thing that we can do around this, rather than creating technologies to safeguard against that, is actually to educate our audiences in what is okay and what's not okay, and make sure that gets implemented. And diversity has to apply to every colour of face, every shade of sexual preference and gender identity that makes up our community. Dance music holds a unique place as a universal language without barriers of colour, language, or border. And for God's sake, let's make sure that the diversity on the dance floor is mirrored behind the decks and across our workforce. Thank you. We've made progress, but we have to get to the point where nobody's still counting the number of women or people of colour or LGBT DJs on lineups. We've got to move past that, move things forward, and reflect our scene both on and off the dance floor. Women are still 3 times less likely to reach executive positions in electronic music, still. And as a senior female now in this sector, this really annoys me, but it doesn't surprise me. I'm going to be continuing AFEM's work to elevate talented women across our sector and to help everyone recognise the amazing strength that better gender balance brings across the board. And a final word on our diversity strategy. We've just launched a groundbreaking survey on neurodiversity in electronic music. It's the first of its kind in our sector. The conversation about neurodiversity has been growing, but there's still a lot of lack of understanding and knowledge about exactly what it is, what the conditions are, who suffers from them, what are those challenges that they face, and how can we as an industry put the right support in place so that they thrive and that everyone gets the best out of uniqueness of these people's brains and their abilities. Science has proved that we are genuinely wired differently as human beings. And neurodivergent wiring can lead to huge creativity, problem solving, data mining, deep dive analysis, out-of-the-box thinking, and incredible relationship building. Greta Thunberg called her autism a superpower, the thing that helps drive her tenacity and vision for her campaign against the climate crisis. If the environments are right in our sector for all of our different brains and ways of working, we can all succeed together, and our community will be stronger and more vibrant for it. Finally, I want to talk sustainability, and I know this has many meanings for us right now. We're coming out of the pandemic slowly, cautiously, and we still have to focus on rebuilding and sustaining our scene and ecosystem. A lot of people are still suffering the financial impact and will be for a while yet. So while we're not out of the woods, we know we need to get back to an even keel. But then we also need to shoulder our responsibilities to the global effort against climate crisis. We have to play our part. Where we can put measures in place now and next year, we must. Thereafter, we and the world have little other choice. It's not just about the survival of our scene, but the survival of our species. So for now, let's explore sustainable options where we can afford it. Encourage green options to our communities, especially in terms of travel to and from events. Partner with or signpost to companies that can provide solutions and companies that can help reduce or mitigate waste at events. We can also encourage individual responsibility and good choices across our global networks and fans without it having to cost precious profit. Our AFEM Green Working Group will work with all of you to help build that sustainable and successful future. Because after all, no planet means no party. So, just to wrap up, we've come a long way, both as our industry and as AFEM in these last 10 years. But there's so much more we want to achieve and build on and fight for in the next 10 and beyond. And I want us to fight for success together and positive change together. Collaboration, so key. Ensure that the whole ecosystem thrives and our collective voice proves more powerful and strong than any of us individually or in our silos. By further growing AFEM's reach through membership and partnerships across our sector, our voice can be stronger still. We've got a lot to be optimistic about going into this new chapter, not just for electronic music, but the industry in general, with exciting and powerful technology, both existing, emerging, and not even yet conceived of. And that technology, coupled with creative thinking, will help us constantly innovate and drive our business and communities forward. Our industry is now recognizing the power of more diverse voices, opinions, ideas, and movements across our scene. We'll continue to push hard to make sure our industry and community reflects, supports, and embraces that diversity. We want to provide a genuinely inclusive, vibrant ecosystem based on shared values and mutual respect. And as we build back from the pandemic now and into next year, we'll strive to engage our businesses and communities with those bigger picture issues that affect all of us, build a sustainable industry, take on collective and individual responsibilities, and be part of the solution, not the problem. We want to innovate for the benefit of the planet as well as for our sector. Please do connect with any of the AFEM team here at IMS if you'd like to find out more about AFEM, what we do, how we can collaborate, and how we can push things forward with you. Thank you.